Hello everyone, I pray you're all well. You're welcome to today's lecture on stakeholder analysis. So for projects and participatory activities, for example, participatory planning or participatory monitoring and evaluation, we always require involvement of the concerned stakeholders in the community. And by definition, we see that stakeholders are all those who have interest or concern in the issues that are being addressed. And these stakeholders can either be active or passive. Active stakeholders are those that affect a given project or project activities, and passive stakeholders are those that are affected by a particular project. The examples of stakeholders include government, customers, employees, investors, suppliers, communities, researchers, and so on. So it depends on which particular concern that you're addressing in that particular community. So now let's look at the definition of stakeholder analysis. We see that stakeholder analysis is an approach to understanding a system and changes that are in that system by identifying key actors or stakeholders and assessing their respective interests in that system. Okay, so it is a technique of participatory approaches, and it is a very important starting point for any kind of project or public involvement in the particular community. Stakeholder analysis also helps in identifying and prioritizing which stakeholders can have impact on given project issues or on the success of a particular project. So that is why it is very, very important to carry out. Let's now look at the objectives of stakeholder analysis. Number one is that stakeholder analysis seeks to identify and assess the degree of influence which individuals, groups, institutions, or any other organization may have on the specified activity or project. So we want to see which kind of influence this particular category of people or organizations would have on our project. Then two, it also seeks to identify, assess, and compare their sets of interests in the issue that is being handled. Then the other one is examine inherent conflicts or capabilities. Okay, so we would also want to see conflicts that may occur or that may rise when the project is being implemented. Then it would also seek to describe and explore particular trade-offs or balance between the two desirable but incompatible futures, or in case there is any particular compromise. Okay, so here we have a sample stakeholder analysis table, and we see that this table includes a number of issues. For example, the name of a given stakeholder. And remember, we gave examples. A stakeholder could be an individual or an institution. So here we have the name of that particular category. Then the role they play. It could be a farmer, it could be a service provider, and so on. Then we also include why they are important, why that particular stakeholder we are putting there is important. Then the rank that we give to their importance, then the current attitude or status of that particular stakeholder. For example, here we say that the stakeholder does not understand our project. So it could be that their understanding is at different levels. Then what we would like them to do in that particular project, which activity would you like them to implement? Then the key messages. For example, here we say that there are benefits to him in working with us. Do they benefit or do they contribute to the project activity? And if so, how does that happen? Then we also include how we wish to involve them or to bring them on board, and then when we plan to do that, and who is responsible for ensuring that that particular person is brought on board or is informed about the activities. So this table can go on and on depending on how many stakeholders we wish to have. Okay, so now let's look at the importance and influence of particular stakeholders, because remember, in stakeholder analysis we wish to understand how important a particular stakeholder is, okay, and which kind of influence they have on a particular project activity. There are stakeholders who might affect project activities just by talking ill about a given project. For example, if we have religious leaders in the community and they do not support the kind of project that we have, or they don't even support the donors, then the activities might not be successful, just because these are people who have a lot of influence in the community. Sometimes it could be even politicians. If they talk to the people just by the fact that the people believe in them, and they talk ill or they talk well about a given project, any of the two could either positively or negatively affect this particular project. Okay, so now let's look at the aim of the importance influence matrix, because this is a tool that we use in understanding how important and how influential a given stakeholder is. So the aim is to capture the degree of influence and level of interest of each stakeholder over the objective of the project. And then its importance is that it helps to map out stakeholders and their relationship to the issue at stake in the project or to a given project activity. It also generates insight on the importance and influence of each particular stakeholder. So it helps you to understand which stakeholders are there and what relationship that they have, and then it also helps you get an insight of the importance and influence that they have on your project. Okay, so when do you use the importance influence matrix? One, you can use it when initiating a project at the beginning, or when you're entering into a community, or when reviewing a situation with an established project. So the project could have gone ahead, but then you wish to understand your stakeholders at that particular point. And you would also want probably to bring on board those stakeholders that were not brought on board at the beginning of the project. So how do we develop this importance influence matrix? One, you require a flip chart or a whiteboard and some markers. And now we are talking about the rural setting, but it could be a project that is actually looking at people who are literate and people who understand technology. So in that case, you can even go ahead and use a computer. So what you need to draw are 4 quadrants where we have axes. So you could have this as level of importance and this as influence that particular stakeholder has. So the influence increases along this axis, and then the importance increases upwards. So we have quadrant A, B, C, and D. We say that the second step is to organize a group of farmers. Remember, stakeholder analysis should also be done together with the community. So you organize the group and support them to brainstorm so as to identify the stakeholders in the community. And remember, we said they could be individuals, groups, organizations, and institutions that you are sure will impact on a given project or given project activity. Then determine whether the stakeholder is likely to enable, that is the importance, or sabotage, which is the influence on the given intervention. Okay, so this is what we were talking about. We have the level of importance, which increases upward. So here we have low importance, and here we have high importance. And then level of influence, which increases along this axis, and therefore we have low importance and high importance. So when you look at these quadrants, you're able to see that the description is given related to which level of axis that particular quadrant is placed at. Okay, so A is high importance, low influence, and these are the people we call the victims. And then B is high importance, high influence, and these are the people that can make a difference in that particular activity or project. And then we have low importance, low influence, and these are the bystanders. And then we have C, the low importance and high influence, and these are called the irresponsible stakeholders. Okay, so like we've seen the quadrants, we see that in box A or quadrant A, we have stakeholders who will require special initiatives to protect their interests. Okay, so we are supposed to ensure that these are satisfied at all times. Then B, we require a good working relationship with them. Okay, and then C is a group that might be a source of risk. Okay, and so they will need careful monitoring and management. So this is the category we are talking about. Then D is a group that may have some limited involvement in the evaluation, but are relatively of low priority. Okay, so these are the ones that require minimum effort, but there is normally need to monitor their involvement along the particular project period. Okay, so the final step is to determine which actions that can be taken to ensure that all the key stakeholders or actors add value to the proposed project. So what we want to understand is what we can do to get stakeholder support and reduce their opposition. So these strategies are obtained and they are put together. However, we also have additional questions which can help you to do a further analysis with a team, so that you can, one, understand the problems that affect these stakeholders and how the project seeks to address them. Then you can also wish to understand which needs and interests will be met most by the project. You might also need to understand whose interests are in line with the project objectives. And finally, you might also wish to understand the stakeholders who might have negative influence on the project and how you can mitigate that problem. So now let's look at the applicability. One is that knowing about the importance and influence of each stakeholder is essential in developing the stakeholder strategic plan. Then two, also knowing the importance and influence of these stakeholders is very essential in future participatory decision making. And finally, we see that this also contributes to understanding how to associate with different stakeholders and how to avoid conflicts with them. And then for the advantages, one, we see that this analysis provides an understanding of how to associate with sensitive and important stakeholders. So in so doing, we are able to meet the concerns or the interests of these particular groups, hence avoiding conflict. Then it also gives the planner or the project planners an overview of the important groups or the important stakeholders that are available, and then possible problems which have to be dealt with in order to ensure that these stakeholders actually support the project. And finally, it facilitates planning, because you know which kind of people you're supposed to work with. Then finally, for the disadvantages, we see that this analysis might not be representative, and hence it can lead to misinterpretations. So you might find a situation where you only look at very important stakeholders, or those who have a very high degree of influence, not knowing that even those with low influence can actually sabotage the project. Okay, so if not well done, or if the people are not skilled to facilitate the process, very influential information can be forgotten. Okay, thank you so much for listening, and in case you have any questions about this topic, kindly send them to me through my email address or through the learning management system. May God bless you.